parents and children don't have communication, where children don't feel supported, there's a distance, a chasm develops between the child and the parent. The parents, in fact, don't turn to, the children, in fact, don't turn to parents for advice, which is really where they should be going. Parents have their children's best interest at heart, no matter what their style. But if you are cold and don't provide the warmth, unfortunately, when they most need you, they may not turn to you, which would be devastating. In addition to the children turning away, the parents in these situations don't know their children. They don't know their children's interests. They don't know their friends. They don't know their children's friends' parents. And these are actually all very important things to develop and foster that loving relationship, right? It's not just a matter of, again, saying I love you and being accepting, but it's knowing what makes your kid tick, what they enjoy, what games they like to play, and then engaging them in those games, even if it's something that you don't like. So if your child loves to race and that doesn't really do it for you, but you engage them in that sport because they enjoy it and it builds that relationship and it builds that acceptance and that support and that you're there for them. So those are the kinds of things that make the difference. If you don't even know that the child has an interest in track and field, how are you going to foster the development? How are you going to use the things they like to maybe come up with some useful analogies for their life, or to use that as a reward, as positive reinforcement, or to use it as punishment if you need to, right? Withhold something that they like. If they hate banana cream pie and you say no dessert for you tonight, the kid's happy. That wasn't a very effective punishment, right? So knowing your child is important for a number of reasons. And spending time together is critical. In New York especially, I always hear parents saying to me that we lead such busy lives, myself included. And as I was writing this talk up, I was just thinking that it's so sad that sometimes in our busyness of whatever it is that we're doing, that we may neglect our children unintentionally. And I think that's a very important thing to think about and implement. And may Allah make it easier for us to all do that, and to really give it some thought. The time that we spend with our kids is very important. It's easy to forget sometimes in the day-to-day hassles of life. Even if you're sending your kids to Islamic school, it isn't enough. Obviously, they need parents to be their foremost teachers and companions and to be with them. What are the results of warmth? What do studies show warmth accomplishes? How is it effective? What do we see as results? It actually motivates children. That goodwill that you generate motivates them to cooperate with you as you're attempting to lead productive lives and get day-to-day tasks done, and inshallah be good Muslims together. It's associated with children developing a sense of moral, sort of intact moral values. Again, this is secular studies, so this isn't even looking at religiously oriented families, but in secular families, children seem to have a better sense of right and wrong when there's a warm relationship between the parents and children. And it plays an important role in developing communication. If you don't have that warm relationship, it's hard to really foster good communication because you're so distant from the child. The closer you are, the easier and the more effective your communication will be. Not only will it be easier for you to sit down and have a discussion because your child isn't a stranger, you know your child, you know what they love, you interact with them, you ask them questions. So not only will it make it easier for you to communicate, but that warm relationship will make it easier for the child to accept your attempts to parent, right? So you do a better job of communicating, and it's easier for them to hear what you have to say, when you have to correct them, when you're trying to guide them. So you're probably much more likely to take advice from a friend than an enemy. So we want to be there close to our children so that they will listen and understand and take in what we say. And sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes you're trying to advise them in a moment of conflict where you and your child, especially if it's an unruly teenager, are disagreeing about something. And if they don't have that relationship with you, you're out. You're not going to listen. They're going to go to their friends, and they'll see what the friends have to say, and their opinions will be more valuable. When in fact those friends are far less experienced and have far less interest in the well-being of your child and how good of a decision they make in any given moment, and nor are they really looking to the future and the consequences of any of these decisions. And they lack in judgment, right? A 13-year-old does not, usually, it's rare, but usually a 13-year-old does not have the judgment of a 33 or a 43-year-old. Experience, maturity, play significant roles. So I guess the question is that I've spent a lot of time talking about warmth. So if we've all go home, we're warm, we're fuzzy, things will be great. Inshallah, everything will be fine. But that de-emphasizes the other dimension I mentioned. So warmth is critical, as I'm trying to establish, but there is something else, and that's that other dimension of control. So warmth isn't enough. And what does control involve? It involves a parent being firm. It involves a parent monitoring their child's activities. It involves enforcing consistent discipline. And if there's something that I emphasize, some of the kids I see come in, the parents are besides themselves. They have a teenager who's out of control, or even a younger child who's engaging, for example, in aggressive behavior. I actually saw a 6-year-old yesterday that happened to be a young Egyptian boy who, at his camp, was running around and was obsessed with beating up on this one other little girl for some reason. And every opportunity was finding her and smacking her. And the parents are, of course, extremely distressed. So not only is love an important part, because clearly they are warm, affectionate, loving parents. Here comes the other part that's critical, is control. Helping the child set limits. And what happens with children who don't have control by parents is that they don't understand consequences. They don't seem to understand the laws of physics, that actions have consequences, actions have reactions, right? That seems to get lost. And they don't develop a term that we like to use in sort of psychobabble, an internal locus of control, right? Which means they don't internalize the value of boundaries and limits and controlling their behaviors because of negative consequences. Because they don't have those experiences in early life with their parents, monitoring, setting limits, providing discipline, and letting them know what's right and wrong. So that's another important aspect that has to be there. So parents who lose control and are involved with children sometimes have to engage in open disagreements, because not everything your child says or does will be correct. And in fact, that is exactly why your guidance and input is so necessary. So again, more reasons why control is important. Children become aware of inappropriate behaviors, and then these behaviors can be changed. So that's the other important aspect, is not only do they understand consequences, but by your guiding them, you're providing consequences. You're showing them how to address mistakes. They understand also that they can change behavior and they can correct it, and inshallah they can lead a better life. So that's an important lesson for them to learn. They also become more focused on life goals rather than being diverted by temptations that may be there in the environment. They have a much clearer sense of what their path in life ought to be. And the last point there is that law of physics that I mentioned earlier. So when we talk about these two dimensions, warmth and control, social scientists group parents largely to 4 parenting styles, based on the level of warmth and control. And so you can actually characterize parents as practicing, one of 4 styles or typologies. You could be either authoritarian, we'll talk about what that means. You could be permissive. You could be neglectful or laissez-faire, or authoritative. So what's the distinction between these 4 styles? Authoritarian parenting is low warmth and high control. And on the following page is a little graph that gives the only visual that I provided for this, so I apologize for that. But it puts it in sort of a graphic presentation. So if you have low warmth, a lot of control, then you have an authoritarian parenting style. A permissive parenting style is the opposite. A lot of warmth. You provide a lot of affection to the child, but little to no control. No ability to set consequences for behavior, limited ability to guide the child, not really setting limits and boundaries for the child, which we've established children need. The neglectful or laissez-faire parent, that third category I mentioned, unfortunately is low warmth